I'm all right. How are you?
All right.
Nah. So, it's not me venting. It's more of me thinking out loud, but not really negative. Do you work with a UX designer?
Um, Sort of, yeah. Um, Occasionally, anyways.
Do they do their proposals usually map well with first party support of the actual framework or the native framework that you're working within?
Um, yeah, yeah, for the most part, because it's web dev, so most of the tools and things are built around web dev that they use. So,
Okay, that makes sense because most of the time when I am employed, it's mobile development.
hmm
And so now that you mention uh, web development, I could see the inspiration of the UX designer and why the wireframes look the way they look. So that's starting to make sense to me now that you mentioned it.
what did they do? A mobile app at like 1440 wide resolution or something?
No, it's the wireframes that they're presenting. Um, like the wireframes that they have include like radio buttons that if you click one of the options of the radio buttons, its color changes, and the other ones their color changes to what one may deem as not selected, that type of UX. And like all this is custom work for me, but there is no radio button in Android.
Hmm.
And I would say there's no radio button in Xamarin Forms, which is the framework that I'm using to do cross-platform. There's no radio button selection, right? It's
Really?
not supported. What they have is what they have is list views or picker choices,
hmm
meaning that you hit a drop down, you have a list of items that you can choose from, and you pick that item.
Yeah.
And it's just very simple, short. Now, does do the radio button stuff that they put in the wireframe, does it look cooler? Does it look more interactive? It looks more interactive, yes. But is it going to where me implementing a picker on a page can take maybe maybe 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes.
hmm
Um, the the radio buttons for me to implement to the spec that they have is probably going to take like 2, 3 days to finalize and get rid of all the bugs. So it's usually I'm usually passive aggressive, and I just oh that's what he's proposing. No, I'm not doing that. And then when I demo, I usually like wait for them to say, well, why didn't you use whatever? Then I have a conversation about, well, do you want to pay $2,500 for me to do this, or do you want to pay $30 for the way it's already been done? All right, so
Well, yeah, but I mean, you could have that. You should be able to have that conversation up front. I guess anytime I, run into something where it's really going to be difficult, it's a conversation with the product owner or whatever to say, hey, with that exact equation, like I can do this in 10 minutes with this, or I could spend a week on it, or 2 weeks,
My
or a
thought
month.
process, my thought process is that it's more beneficial for me to demo what I propose and the value that is already in there. It's already done, and it didn't really cost me more than 10-15 minutes to do. And then say, all right, do you want me to pull this out and spend the next 2-3 days, aka 24 hours, 16 24 hours, whatever the math is, to do this. The This isn't a consumer app. This isn't like 16-year-old teenage girls, using the app. This is like emergency responders. They just want to get work done, and that's it. Like, you don't have
Hmm.
to wow them with Angry Bird type UI or UX.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I guess it depends on it. So with these options that they have, do they have other descriptions along with them, or some other reason why they have to be all options should be displayed at the same time? I
uh,
mean, because that's
so
that's actual UX type stuff where it's like there's a
yeah,
reason behind the UI choice. But
this is true. You know, something that, and I'm still staying on subject.
mhm,
One of the advantages of domain modeling is you're able to expose patterns that may not have been caught in the UX design. So, meaning that this application has several different assessment forms to pick from.
mhm,
And so when I'm domain modeling this in F sharp, I'm like, oh, I see a pattern. Trauma victims, they first responders or the trauma centers that are awaiting their arrival usually want to know the gender of the patient. They want to know if the patient is 65 years or older. They want to know if the patient is on any blood medication, whether it's antiplatelets or anti something coagulants, whatever that word is.
mhm.
Um, uh, if it was a vehicular accident, meaning motorcycle or automobile, then there's a couple more items that are in there, such as is there head trauma, right?
Yep.
So as I'm distilling down, right, I'm trying to use a, a word to make me sound smart. As I take the distilled types that are a product of my domain modeling activities, I'm realizing that these assessment forms that are related, such as motorcycle accident, car accident, or anything dealing with trauma, they share the same fields. The reason why I say all this is because in UX, those fields aren't being exposed uh, in the various assessments, but they should be. So, in conclusion, those wireframes are ignoring and I'm not bashing it, but those wireframes are ignoring the essence of what the trauma centers are asking for.
Hmm.
So the UI design might look really nice and interactive, but a radio button that only exposes three options uh, for an automobile crash. Well, that's another thing. Like automobile crash, it has a radio button selection for what it crashed with, but the motorcycle assessment form doesn't. Well, that's probably important, right? So, make long story short, there's I've identified uh, items that are not accounted for for a radio selection,
Hmm.
such as you crash with the pedestrian, you crash with the another automobile, or you I think those are the two options. But what about crashing into a stationary structure, whether it's a barrier on the freeway,
Yeah.
or you crash into a building? Um,
Or a
like,
deer.
yeah. So, to make a long story short, because I went through the exercise of domain modeling and I was able to identify the patterns of trauma, um, there's just missing information. And if you have radio button selection, and you're only exposing like three different items, but through my exercise of domain modeling, I found five items. Well, that's going to change the UI, right? Why not throw that in a picker drop down to choose from versus littering the UI with half the page just having all these different radio button selection items to choose from. So
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying is if if the options on, well, I guess, with that, there's it should be one click is the other thing, because a drop down takes 2 clicks. So I don't know if maybe click, I don't know, maybe if
it
that was in the calculation too about the speed of
it takes two
clicking it.
clicks, but uh, it also hides information until the user decides that that information wants to be exposed. So we could think about the WinForms days where you have a form and there's like 50 different text boxes on there, right?
Hmm.
And 50 different text boxes, 20 different check boxes, all that stuff, right? And so in regards to UX, if some of these if some of these controls or fields are optional, do you really want to expose all the items that are associated to that one option if it's relevant? And the answer, I think, is no. So
Yeah,
even though it may take two actions, drop down, select, that's only if that's a required field.
sure, sure. Well, I guess it depends too, and if it's split across pages or not. Like, I could imagine going through an app where it's a question with radio, or a list, just a list of things, and I click one and then I click continue, or it automatically continues once I click one, with the option to go back if I feel like I made a mistake. If it's all on the same page, though, yeah, then having a bunch of radio buttons I have to scroll through is going to be a pain in the butt. So
Especially if they're not relevant.
yeah, for sure.
So
So I don't. I guess I don't know the app you're working on, but it sounds like you're making meaningful back. Giving back meaningful advice or observations, which I think is a good way to do it as a developer.
well,
So
the way I'm giving it back is I just demo what I did and let them ask, why did you not follow the wireframe? I'm like, because this is what I've discovered. Blah
yeah,
blah 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 blah.
sometimes I'll do to deal with that kind of thing. Sometimes I'll do physical mock-ups and actually mock up the code, but a lot of times I just do like a little I'll take what their mock-up is, rip out everything I don't like, and put something else in, and send it back and say, how about this?
Yeah.
But
And it kind of leads down to the subject of, are you a programmer or are you a collaborator? All
yeah.
right. Are you the blue collar worker where the leadership or the middle manager tells you to do something and you just follow orders? Or do you consider yourself a partner and you have a vested interest in the success of the product?
Mhm.
Because there's people that are on two different sides of it. And I would argue that probably 70% of folks are on the don't ask questions, monkey see, monkey do. And that's it.
Yeah. Well, and it's tough to be on the other side too, because you run into people who expect you to be monkey see, monkey do, and when you don't, they get kind of upset, or you get voted off the island, as we used to say. So, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, I'm one of those people. I like to challenge and think about what I'm doing, and present options, and not just occasionally. I'll just go, you know what, I'm just going to do this as written, and I'm just going to put in, or ignore the edge cases that I know are there, or there's things that for instance, UX stuff doesn't normally capture, is the feel of the interactions, like in terms of like I have this one right now where there's an entity that's kind of out of that needs additional work, there's a scroll to activity to it. Like you press a button and it will bring you right where you need to go to complete your work and select that item and go like there's no call for there to be a smooth scroll. But I just injected that in because I'm like, well, of course they want this to be smooth. It's pretty jarring when suddenly poof, you're there and stuff like that. Um, so like stuff like that, I tend to just fill in blanks with how do I think this should feel if I was really building something that's my own and all of that. There's so much that's unspecified, and you can tell when somebody does that kind of thought versus not, and it really delights the product owners. Um, I had there for a while at least, and probably still, the I get on calls with our product owner, and he'd be like, "Oh, Sean's here," and he's like, "I know that when Sean does something, because I really love it and it's clean, and he gives me pretty beautiful things."
Mm.
So, I mean, I get a lot of praise for doing that kind of stuff, but it's definitely you know outside the scope of normal work. But in the same breath, I don't nearly appreciate testing, the kind of dev testing that most people do. So I was thinking about that this week and how so like I write
You're
PR
talking about
prompt.
you're talking about from the code level or from the UI
Yeah,
level?
yeah, from the code level. I write. I was thinking about that this week about how like a lot of unit tests they describe the behavior, but they don't really put a lot into intent. And like,
I disagree with that, but I'm listening.
yeah, I guess it's the ones that I'm seeing. Maybe I don't know. Like,
There's always setup. There's always four stages, right? There's setup, there's test, verify, and tear down.
well, like these unit tests will be like, you know, given someone passes null, this is going to return an exception or something. That I wouldn't write it like that, but or you know, given this isn't in the database, it will return an error. Okay, I don't know. So sometimes they're written at a level where it makes sense what they're trying to do. Like if they go over this dollar amount, then this you will get back this error message or this message. Um, but
The names don't the test names don't explain the intent.
well, I mean, they explain like a lot of times they'll be written in kind of like a I don't know. They'll describe. I mean, most of them will be what the name of the unit is, what the condition under test is, and then the expected result. So, like, I don't know, like, let's just say you had a fruit and you're testing like, is this been like, is this fruit a banana? Is the method? So it'd be like, test would be like, is this fruit a banana? Underscore if or when this is the situation underscore then returns true. That'll be like the test name,
Mm.
which I don't know is pretty common. But I was thinking about how I write up a lot of usually when I do pull requests, and I have gotten really bad about this lately, just because I don't think people tend to care. They're just kind of rubber stamping pull requests, but I try to give a lot of information about the why. Um, at least I used to, and I'd like to capture that in a test. Like I had this thought that maybe like what I should do is write like a whole story or paragraph or a couple paragraphs or whatever about why I'm making the change, put that in the code, and then like call out each test as a figure in like this big string. So I'll have like this text that says, okay, this is what the business wants, and this is why I'm doing it, and here's how this is expressed in the code. So see figure A for this thing, see figure B for this thing, and those figures just point to different methods that are actually test methods. I'm just trying to think of a different way to test so that I don't I don't feel constantly like I'm just doing it wrong or that it's not useful or it makes the code hard to change.
So I thought that you can associate a check-in to a work item.
Hmm.
That check-in is going to, that's essentially a change set, right?
Yeah.
And your change set is going to be a set of files that were either added, deleted, or modified. And those are going to include your unit test files as well, right?
Yeah.
But you're saying that's not enough. You're saying
Well, I mean,
detail
it's
the
the
check-in notes.
yeah. Well, the problem is that so like 3 months later, if I go to make a change and a test breaks, and I go, well, that's not needed, or okay, well, I'm changing the structure of the detail here. This doesn't need it. I don't know why they originally put that test in. Was it just because they wanted to make sure that that the flow they expected to happen, or was it a really important detail that this thing has to happen or X will happen? Like if I remove an exception because I'm like, oh, we can just handle it differently, or I'll make this an error type instead of throwing an exception, and then I won't handle the exception. Like, what have I just done? I don't know. I want to express tests in terms of why I'm making changes to the system instead of just what is this thing doing. In the same way that I would write a comment, I guess. I don't know. It's maybe none of that makes sense.
I, I don't think that's a unit test.
Yeah, it's
No, boy,
not.
we just opened up a can, right? I think that's
It's
more of
not.
a
Yeah,
acceptance test, right? Given your whole gherkin
yeah. I
syntax.
don't want to write gherkin though either. I want to write it in like a because that to me is another thing. Like, oh, okay, you're telling me given this is the situation, this is what should happen, but I don't know why that's important. Like I want to write a like a story or like an essay almost to be like this is what the business people told me. This is what, this is how they want it to work. And here's how I express that in the code and here's the assumptions that I made and this is how it's expressed. I don't
Yeah,
know. Like
I do that, but I do that already. I just do it through types.
yeah, but it's you have to put together a piece then. It's not a narrative is what I'm saying.
But
I want to write like a
but that's what I
narrative.
do. Like, okay, so I think I've shown you screenshots before
Hmm.
of my operations library or my specification library in which there's usually two files, uh, uh, operations file and a language file, or should I say, an operations module and a language module. And the operations module is a set of function types that really represent uh, business operations or domain operations, the core domain operations for a given business. If that's not expressing intent in the I can't say the word specificity, I can't say the word, the specifics, um I think it does a better job because it's just like automated tests, it's compilable documentation, but it's literally like a test code doesn't depend on it, right? Test depends on the code. But when you write out your your function types to really model the core operations of the business, like your interpreters, whether it's your automated tests that are interpreting it, or should I say your mocks that are interpreting it that are used by the automated tests, or the actual like data gateway code, it it's always going to be valid as long as it compiles. And I may not say valid as the right word, but it's always going to be the source of truth of what your business code is doing. Did I butcher that? Do you kind of understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get that. Um,
So so
but
my
yeah.
argument so my argument is if if you or people want to figure out what the actual intent is, my argument is why not go to the operations spec that is actually coded, aka if we're doing OOP, the interface. Like, why can't interfaces be the source of truth? And that's a question.
Yeah, well, I mean, if I have a service and I say it takes in this ID and this is what I get back, yeah, under these sets of circumstances, doesn't tell anyone why that's important, right?
Well, what do you get back? So here's an example with the apps that I build, and specifically this one is there's and I've been dealing with this for a couple of days now. You have an activation code, okay?
Mhm.
So I really wish I could share my code with you, but I can't.
It's all right.
All right, so here's the workflow. There's an activation code that a user puts in because they can download the app from the App Store, but in order for them to use it, they have to have an activation code. Once they have an activation code and it's successfully accepted, then uh, a service, when it successfully processes that activation code that was submitted, it's going to return a essentially a, a URL that points to an environment um, that the user can use, and that gets persisted. That URL is kind of like a base address that points
Mhm.
to the server, right? um, or the type of server, the environment that the server is on, that they have access to. All right. So here's one function type that models a core operation of a account domain is uh, I really, if I could show you this on the screen, it'll be a lot easier. But essentially, it's uh, there's a function type called activate, and it takes a activation code. Even though activation code is a string, I literally create a type
Type, yeah.
abbreviation called activation code. It returns a result of, if it's successful, a a environment URL. If it's not successful, an error. Okay, here's the next step. So there's a function type called activate, which I'm
Yep.
summarizing right now, that if successful returns activate environment URL. My next function type is sign in. That a sign in requires a credential, aka username, password, and also that environment URL that should be persisted on the application device, local storage. Okay. Your sign in operation, given that credential, which is 3 items: username, password, and environment URL. It's going to return a result. If that's successful, you're going to get a authenticated user type, right? Else you're going to get an error. Or you may, if it's successful, you may get an authenticated user type, or you get nothing. And if there's any type of server errors, you just get an error returned, right? So, make a long story short, I'm being very specific in the terms that I'm using for my core operations, and it's expressing intent. I
Yeah,
think it
yeah, and
is.
that in order to have an authorization code to you or the environment URL, you have to have gone through the authorization process and to get it to sign in or whatever, and it's very explicit that those are the steps that you need to take because of the way that the inputs and outputs flow together.
But the thing is I'm using extremely rich domain types
Mhm.
so that it won't even compile, right? I'm not passing back uh, bulls and strings. I'm literally
Mhm.
passing back qualified types that only can be used in other operations, right? So, like, in order to sign in, you can't sign in without a type that encompasses a environment URL, right? So I'm using all these rich types that can only be used as a capability to progress to the next operation if you even get that far, right? It sucks trying to articulate it, but I mean, so my question is, why isn't that a good enough strategy to provide intent? Hence, why isn't using a rich type system that's qualified throughout the stages of whatever workflow? satisfactory.
Well, then I guess why do you need to write tests at all then?
I write tests to validate the domains that I generated through the exercise of domain modeling. So take a day or two domain modeling if it's a large scale project, or medium to large scale project. I'll take a couple of days to do that. Once I have my types, once I come out with my types, then my next step is to validate if these types are actually usable. So then I use test driven development and I do a plug and play with the types that I've generated. And then that's where I find I need to make a tweak to this type, I need to make a tweak to that function, etc. So that's where I use tests at, is to validate what I already have at, at the type level scope, not at the implementation scope, if that makes any.
So once you validate those, do you delete the tests then?
No, tests are free. I only delete the tests if the requirements change and my tests fail. Then I don't need these tests anymore. But for me, tests explain what is supposed to work, and so there's no reason for me to delete it if that's still the policy, if that's still true. So I mean, the tests are already written. I don't need to delete it just because I have high confidence that my domain model is good enough that it's not necessary for me to delete the tests. There's nothing for me to really gain because those tests are still validating the 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 vision. It's only when those tests fail, and they fail for a good reason because requirements change, that I delete the tests because they're no longer relevant.
Sure,
And tests
sure.
still explain. See, the type system is going to explain the business policies, right? Um, the automated tests are going to explain or detail what it means to build up, what it means to set up that particular operation for it to be successful. So it's like two different scopes of documentation. Testing
Yeah,
always okay. So
yeah, and I guess maybe my point about the thing is I want to write it in a narrative form for some reason, in a way that's not this thing, this thing, but actually has a story to it. But and that's just something I don't know was floating around in my mind.
I mean,
But
that's to me, that's what acceptance tests is. Spec flow or cucumber, given blah, when I blah, 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 blah. Like that's what I thought those tools were meant for.
yeah, but there's no flow to it though, right?
Have you looked at spec flow?
Well, I don't know. The Gherkin syntax doesn't make sense, but yeah, I guess I haven't looked at spec flow. How does that? Does that just here's a box floats to the next box or what?
I'll show you. I mean, it's been a while since I've only dabbled with it. I've never done anything professional with it.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I don't. I really don't hear that much about it. I mean, I know it's mature. I don't know who uses it. I should have an example somewhere down here. Um, yeah, that's an issue with their website. Is I should be able to. Okay. All right. So here's. Can you see my screen? Okay.
Yep.
So here's a requirement. Calc. So they have a feature saying, for a calculator, in order to avoid silly mistakes as a math idiot, I want to be told the sum of two numbers. All right. So then in the syntax for SpecFlow, they have, I guess this is a test, what they call a scenario. Given I have entered 50 into the calculator and I have also entered 70 into the calculator, when I press add, then the result should be 120 on the screen. And like this is their test. Now, how does that translate to the code that actually validates that, I don't know, assumption? No, I don't know off the top of my head, but well, here it is right here. So is this kind of what you were looking at or looking for, or no?
No, not really.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe I'm just stating this poorly. Um, like you'd never capture that you had a conversation with someone about this, and this is what they said, and this is how you interpret. You'd never put that into a test, but
Okay.
it's relevant contextual information for why you did something way back when, um, and it gives meaning to and the calculator is such a trivial example, but um, it might give meaning to an instance of what to do when, like, what conversation did you have about overflow and why you might overflow into certain cause errors and what that's going to look like and those kinds of things. I don't know. It's yeah. I might just have to try tinkering with this thought for a while and
It sounds like a cool tool to build.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe part of it is I wish that all of this stuff that I capture in PR documentation was somehow relevant to the code other than through, like, if somebody had to go and mine through the PR history to see what the intent was at that time.
So it's kind of like putting hyperlinks on code for it to navigate to some conversation thread, whether it's on Microsoft Teams, HipChat, or even to some slide deck or some Word document.
Yeah, maybe.
I,
I guess
that would be cool.
if you've got time to eke out formal specs like that with SpecFlow and everything, I guess that stuff would already be down and everything. But maybe I'm just in a situation where things are a lot more fluid and changing rapidly, and so the requirements themselves are not
That's a cool
usually
tool.
buttoned down. But
That's a cool tool. Like if your vision is essentially creating hyperlinks within syntax so that it will generate or not generate, but it will display a dot that provides the context for that block of code. I think that would be cool.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, you definitely could link out to conversations or provide some sort of graphs or something like that. Uh, but even just referencing specific tests that you write and how you came and describing in context why you came to what were the conversations or things that were said or and actually even that's not that big deal. Mostly I guess I'm worried about things like what exceptions did I intentionally put in here? What things did I intentionally ignore? Or said we're going to handle differently, or I know this is going to change later, or um, this is less than ideal, so I did it, but I did it this way because of why.
So here's
It
the
just,
question:
yeah,
is I think I know the answer, but why can't you just capture that in the comments in the code?
yeah, because people just ignore comments. That's why that's why tests kind of make sense as living documentation, but um, it's a pain in the ass to write them. But there's no, I don't know, there's not a good narrative structure to it.
What does the government do? The like federal projects, do they just not have fat documents that are hundreds of pages and they just have hella
That no one
revisions of it?
reads.
Or they have to read it in
Yeah,
order for it to be signed off. But they just have like, I would assume like hundreds of revisions for projects that are like more than 5 years.
yeah. Let's just say, maybe that's a good way to put it. I usually capture intent in comments. I want that comment intent to be how the to be like the test. I don't know. Or I want it to be in the code in some way so that it's not just glossed over as unimportant or it goes stale.
So
I,
this kind
I
of
don't know.
maps over to the legal industry, right? Or to, I don't know what you call it, legal law industry, whatever, where you have individual cases and you have different states and districts and cases, so and so versus the state of Virginia, and there's laws that get amended, and then there's, I don't know if you want to call it clause or whatever, but how do judges and lawyers and prosecutors and cops don't know law? They don't even know what they enforce. But how do they deal with that? Right? They must have a system where they're able to get up to date with the latest revision of a code or of a what do you call it?
Yeah, release notes.
What do you I don't know the name of it.
Statute.
Yeah, statute. What is a statute?
What is this? I don't.
Yeah, what's the formal definition?
A statute.
Yeah,
I don't know. I guess to me it would be likely it would have to do with
a written law passed by a legislative body.
yeah.
And so in in the legal industry, and that doesn't sound right. I don't know what's the name of the industry, but you have revisions on statutes, you have a whole bunch of different codes, and like the stuff changes periodically, if not often. Same thing with taxes, right? Taxes is a good example. It's probably a better example than law. Um, how does TurboTax keep up with the state changes and the federal changes? We just had. Are you still there?
Yeah.
Okay, I closed some windows, so I wasn't sure if I accidentally closed you out. We the Fed just, I have filed my tax extension for my corporation, like on the deadline, on the last day you could do it. I didn't even realize. I thought that there was only one deadline. I didn't know there was a deadline for corporations versus personal. I
Well,
wonder
now
how
there's
much money
probably
I
a
have to be
deadline
penalized
for
for.
forever. Wait till July to do it.
Yeah, but so they just made it, I thought, to like June or whatever, July. So
Yeah.
things change all the time. How does TurboTax keep up with that stuff? That's what I'm interested in. And maybe that could support what you would like to do.
Yeah. I think they're probably using more formal testing stuff. They probably take the law and describe it into to computable detail and then go that route. But yeah, no, I'm more like we have this we've got fluid conversations that produces code, um, because we're kind of rapidly iterating, and it's really hard to capture that the fluid nature of things. um, but I don't know. I just have a hate relationship with testing, so I'm
I don't
trying
know.
to figure out a way to make it suck less. Maybe I just need to do it more at the component level and less at that unit level, and everything should be fine.
Well, I think it should be more at the type level. So what I mean by this is you still have source control, right?
Yeah.
And if you're really leveraging the compiler to enforce policy of the business, um, then you're going to be modifying the type signatures, right? If you're leveraging a rich type system, a rich domain model,
Hmm.
and so in that case, like I keep saying specification library because that's what I've been doing, that's what I've been practicing. It works for me, but every time there's a modification to it, then for me, I think that would be the source of truth, where you could look at the version history of that file, of that operations module, and see what changed and look at the notes about why the various parameters for an operation or the various result type of the operation changed. To me, that would be the source. It's a lot better look try and link it to an implementation. I think it's better to link it to the actual function type that is the source of truth for what specifically goes in and what specifically goes out, and that's it. I don't know.
Well, anyways,
In regards to what I'm working on, I think I'm going to have to. I think I said this last week. I think I'm gonna have to shell out money for Azure support. It's been like damn near 25 days since I posted the question. I put up two bounties. No one has answered it except for one person. His answer was get tech support. And that was his answer on Stack Overflow.
you just got to
And
re-architect it so you don't have to do support.
no, because this is important for me to really understand Azure. And like, if I'm going to make more money, then I need to be doing cloud. I need to be cloud architect, right? And so the more issues I run into that takes forever, the more I have experience and I'm better qualified than those people that never ran into that issue. That's the way I process it.
Well, I already think of you as the Azure expert. In fact, I saw a job posting the other day, and it was Azure, three Azure things on the listing. And I said, this would be a Scott thing, I think.
Was
See,
it remote?
I don't remember. Actually, I don't know if it was yesterday or. Let me look here.
Yeah.
Oh, I
So
saw it says, I don't know what Azure Focus
I don't know what that
that
is.
is, but
Sounds familiar though. I think I heard it on a podcast, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
yeah.
Now I'm going to go ahead and during this great recession
Oh, this
or
one's 100% remote.
this recession 2.0, I think I'm just going to have to man up, bite the bullet, and probably shell another $1,000 for the year on Azure support, Azure tech support, so I could get past this. I don't think I have a choice. No one's answering my question on Stack Overflow. It's only had 100, it had like 180 views of that question. And that question is going on a month old now.
Hmm.
So so that's my status. I've been just I don't know this project at work that I'm gainfully employed in. Like I've been highly motivated. I like to brag during my daily status meetings and demo what I
Yeah,
have.
that's good.
Uh,
We've been doing this for over a year now.
I
Like,
saw that. I saw like I don't know if it's really
it's been like a
volume
year and a month.
55, but it's around there.
Yeah, it was like March 15th or something like that. I don't remember. Jesus. Time goes by. And
Yeah,
I'm still doing nothing.
there's no more developer on fire.
Yeah. There's no more anything right now. Everything's canceled.
There should be some new industries propping up then.
Yeah. I'm interested to see what Zoom competitors pop out of this whole security thing that they have. So,
You,
StreamYard, obviously.
you think this is going to change work environments forever? Do you think that now companies that used to be absolutely no remote must be on site? Do you think that this is now going to change things, or do you think that it's yet to be determined based on how people behave when they work remote?
Um, I guess it depends. If the CEOs uh, find that it was in some way beneficial, which is going to be artificially skewed wrong because everything is going to suck for a little while. I could see it going that way, but the problem is businesses are run by a lot of extroverts, and they want to be together and have a party. That's what
My
they
mm,
want.
yeah, my biggest thing is the combination of working from home and people that are such social creatures that they cannot get off of their Instagram.
Yeah,
That's, I mean, I used to see it at work. where like I would see this lady, like, I don't know, she probably wouldn't be on Instagram, but like it looked like she would be text messaging like every like 3 minutes as she's working as a programmer. I was like, there's no whatever you're trying to deliver isn't going to get delivered anytime soon because you keep context switching, right?
Hmm.
I didn't tell her that, but it's like for people that are expected to be productive and they have this sick obsession with staying in touch with other people during work hours. Yeah, I think for those extremely social butterflies, like it's probably going to leave a bad taste in the mouth. And then it's like, okay, is there going to be a drop in productivity or an increase? And I think it depends on the type of work that people are doing. Are these people that really get off on what they do? Are these people that feel like, if you're like me, when I work remote, I tend to work harder than when I'm on site just because I don't want them to think that I'm screwing around. So I try to over deliver.
But now everybody's working remote, so everybody's under. No, just
Yeah, I'm curious, like how how people are going to be reviewed. I'm also thinking, is this going to be the start of monitoring software, where like if you take an assessment test from home for some certification, I was told, like, for example, Microsoft for Azure, they have someone that is, you set up a webcam and they're monitoring you for the 2-3 hours that you're
yeah.
taking the test or the certification. I'm curious if there's going to be software now where people are going to be required to throw up a webcam, maybe at maybe a 10-foot distance, so that they could be monitored when they work, so that they know exactly how long they left the room for. They're able to see or zoom into what websites they're going into. I think like that might sound silly, but I think I would buy it, especially if I'm a small business and I don't have money to waste. I'm not like a Fortune 100
Then
company.
you've wasted money just doing that, and not trusting people.
You think so?
Yeah, I think. Well, I don't know. Maybe it's just my psyche, but
We're not just
I
talking about
don't.
developers. We're just talking about people in general. And there's a
Yeah,
lot of people that easily find a way to distract themselves. There is. And if I need stuff to come out the pipeline, yeah, I think as a mom and pops business, like, yeah, I want
there's
to.
not a lot of remote mom and pops like
There will be now.
remote work through mom and pops businesses. No, there's still mom and pop businesses are dying, but
I think video surveillance is going to get traction.
yeah, but I don't know. For me, it's one of those things where the moment somebody says we're going to monitor this in a real way, like that, not just oh we've got a log somewhere of what you did, so that they can come back if they need to make a case. They can go back and try to figure something out. But
Okay, the
if it's
unemployment
if
rate
it's an
is.
active whatever, I don't care. I'd be done. I go work at McDonald's or whatever. I don't give a shit anymore.
I do because I have obligations.
I do too, but I'm not gonna let somebody you know dictate how I work and what I do and suggest even for a moment that I'm not going to be productive or whatever if I decide to take a second to do something else.
All right, so maybe it's just a probation period um,
I
thing.
wouldn't I wouldn't do it. I
Oh,
mean,
you have to get put on probation first.
yeah, those would be the worst jobs in the world, and only the people that have no other options or just don't care would do it.
Okay.
Or maybe I should say the moment they put all their VPs and their executives under their own microscope, and their salespeople who are out, doing, drinking and boozing people up and you know
Doing
whatever.
lines. Yeah, I hear
Yeah,
you.
as soon as they start making them wear like those, what are those, cop cam, the badge cams or whatever
Hmm.
for all their sales, then I'll be like, okay, all right, fine, you got it.
Wish they could turn off and on whenever.
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. Well, no, as soon as they can't. Actually, I'd heard there was a company in Wisconsin. I had heard this about there, that they had designed their workstations so that the owner could come in and actually see what was on every single person's screen so that he could monitor what was kind of going on. I'm like, nope, never would work there. Nope.
Yeah, but I mean, if it's their business machine, what's the issue? They own those machines. Like, what's the issue?
Yeah, no, I don't. Fine if they want to do it. I don't care. I'm just not gonna. I'm not gonna work for them.
Okay.
It's. I think that the trust level um, is something that I think is important to me, and treating me not as an employee but as a partner. Um,
I agree with that.
and
My
I don't
my
want to
argument
be.
is, my argument is you shouldn't be doing personal stuff on their machines. That's their machines that they paid for. You do personal stuff on your cell phone or on your own laptop if you want to bring it in. Like
Yeah,
I don't know. I guess I should be a exec or something because I'm like people suck, man. Like the majority of people suck. They do, right? The majority of people are below average statistically, or
yeah,
I won't
but
say
I
that.
mean that
Half
doesn't.
of people are below average statistically.
Yeah,
It's the truth, and so like you have to have some controls in place if you want to be successful, especially if you're competing.
no, man. I don't know. I
Okay.
think that there could be that giving people trust and assuming that they're going to get their stuff done, and validating. But I think that low hanging fruit type stuff that comes out just naturally. Doesn't You don't need to monitor them. It'll come out.
Well, you pick and choose who you monitor. That's the whole point. So if you have someone that's a rock star, you're not monitoring him because they consistently deliver. You have other, but for your remaining 80%, you know, then you periodically check up on them.
Yeah,
And
but the other thing too is maybe the reason why they're doing that is honestly the old office space thing is you're not challenging them in a way that keeps them busy. Um,
this is true.
you give somebody really stupid tasks or not enough work and don't listen to them when they say that they're, hey, you're like, I had a situation where somebody comes to me and says, and I was kind of in a lead type situation. Hey, do you need more people for your team? And I go, no, absolutely not. We need to shed people from our team because we have too many. The communication burden is too great. We can't keep everybody in sync on the same page about the particular solutions. We're all just basically independent small teams within this team. It's too big. No. Um, and they're like, okay, well, we're giving you three more people.
You sure this isn't a Dilbert
No,
cartoon?
that I mean that this happened, and it wasn't just me. It was somebody else with me too who said, "Hey, no, we've got too many people." It's flat out ignored. You know, nope. Here's three more people. This well, no, you're not listening to us, and that just produces a situation where you spread work out. More people have more time to do stuff. They're not like I want to be flooded with big meaningful chunks of work, not like a million little paper cuts where I have to context switch because every solution takes 30 seconds to actually solve. So
Yeah, I
that's
actually
kind of the
I left the
situation.
job because of that. Yeah, I think we both we both like owning the scope of work or owning a module of work and not sharing it with four other people in which you lose the vision or whatever. I left the job because of that. And it was a
Yeah,
greenfield project. And after the first week, I'm like, I asked like, yo, can you actually give me something that I can own without having other developers jump in and out of it? I want to own the quality and the vision. No, I don't think we could do that. All right, well, yeah, I'm leaving.
yeah. Isn't that the ultimate goal of microservices? Is just have one developer per service?
Well, in this case, it was I, in regards to Conway's
That's
law,
the way it's good.
I thought that was the motivation. Um, but honestly, I've had conversations with entrepreneurs that were recommending me for the mobile app that I am building. Right? Um, yeah, you should just use microservices. I'm like, well, I am, but it's only for political gain. Like, no, 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 that's the way to do it. And like as I was like, challenging him on why he never heard of Conway's Law. There's a lot of things he just didn't know about, you know.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people they lack context and history. They just, I don't know, they're slaves to marketing.
Yeah. I kind of want to just work on a monolith again. That'd be just totally monolithic. Would be
Monolith or distributed monolith.
monolith.
I was looking at
One back end, one front end. That's it.
well,
And
okay,
it's huge.
maybe I should have used the word
It's got,
modular monolith or modular monolith,
yeah.
meaning literally one library.
Yeah, but it's modular.
Okay. I think Stack. I was looking at a YouTube video on Stack Overflow's architecture, and the speaker has stated that Stack Overflow was purposely designed as a monolith for compilation time
Yeah.
or for compilation optimization.
Yeah, we built a. We didn't build a monolith with what we have, but we were called the microlith for a while. So we had a bunch, and the thing is it's we built the current service that we have, at least from the beginning, in such a way that it was one deployable, but every single vertical slice had its own database, its own. I mean, it could be at any time split off into another service, and you'd have, you knew exactly where the integration points were to flip it out. But it's so much better that way because there's no network latency. You don't have to worry about it being down. It's just there for the most part. I mean, the database could go down, the network could get screwed up, but that stuff's a lot more reliable than a service that independently deploys. So, I think that one of the guys that I talked to for a while was talking about is you can build a microservice architecture with a single deployable. There isn't any reason why you can't.
Mm.
But
I thought the main motivation was to scale with people that are involved, right? To scale with developers that are involved.
sure.
Would you agree? That's one of the motivations.
Yeah, I get that that's a motivation. I don't know that it's needed. I think there's a lot of waste in having a bunch of people on that you don't need.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Well, it's been real. This is probably the first one where we barely even talked about personal projects.
well, I've not talked about personal projects for a while, so I'm way ahead of the curve. Maybe I'm spreading that. No, you're just really interested in what you're working on. So
Yeah, I'm using the
it's okay
excuse
to take
of
a
we're in a
break.
recession 2.0 as a reason to put in the majority of my hours on my
Yeah,
gainfully employed project to try to.
except for your this is the point where your app has suddenly become really valuable. Probably
Yeah.
everyone's delivering. Everyone.
Uh, so I'm gonna buy tech support so that I could get this thing done. So I'll buy it. I'll buy it this weekend, and by Monday, I'll wait on Microsoft to give me a solution. That might take another week, but by Friday I should have it resolved. So
And then you ping them up for a refund.
I, I mean, if I could, I would. Right? I don't have an issue paying
Yeah,
for 1 month. I have an issue being obligated for the entire year for only one problem. Right?
yeah. And there is no option to pay for just hey, I want targeted help here. Nope.
I don't think so. But I'll just pay for it and I'll just try to cancel it after they help me, and I'm fine. Obviously, paying for the first month's bill. And if they decide that they're gonna, nah, we're gonna charge you for the entire year, then I guess I don't. What am I supposed to do? That
Yeah.
just means I have to do more things in Azure so I get my money's worth.
Well, hopefully they can help you. I mean, what
Yeah,
if they couldn't? I suppose you
they
could.
should, or else they're going to get a bad review because I paid for it.
Yep.
So,
All right. Well, have fun getting your stuff demoable for your stand up.
All right, it's been real. Thanks. Take care.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.